There we go. Over to you, Alan.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's well. Um, if I seem a bit bleary-eyed, my young son, daughter, have been living with us since Sukkot. They sold their flat and the house they were buying went off the market. They're with us with their 21-month-old daughter, and on Shabbat they had a baby boy as well. So it's a bit busy at Shea Shaw at the moment. I've escaped very briefly. So if I'm a little bleary, that's why. Okay, I thought we might share some thoughts on the age-old discussion of Keva versus Kavana. Keva meaning fixed, standardized prayers, which we have, or Kavana, we should make up our own sincere devotion prayers. Mechanical prayers can become rote. We go on automatic pilot. We know this because often on Shabbat, well, certainly with me on Shabbos, we find ourselves going used to the question. Oh, no tefillin. Okay, all right. Noise at the door. Everyone looks round. All right. You say Uvisharecha, or was it first or second paragraph? We go on automatic pilot. It's not unreasonable. It can become a religious drill, which is not a terrible thing. You know, if you're in the army, we do exercise every morning. So we're in God's army. We have religious drill. We spend half an hour devoting ourselves to Hashem. So there is some merit in it. That's not what it's meant to be. Okay. However, if we wait till we're right in the mood for davening ourselves, we may very rarely get to that mood. So it's a tricky one. So to start with, let's look at the terminology of the words prayer, davening, and tefillah. So the Oxford English Dictionary definition of prayer, I've got it here, is a solemn request for help or expression of thanks to God or another deity. That's from the French word prière, which itself is borrowed from the Latin word precarious, which means obtained by entreaty. So if you conjure up a picture of a congregation of prayer, we see a rather formal occasion with great decorum. Davening, on the other hand, our davening consists of praises, blessings, petitions, confessions, numerous biblical quotes, like the Circuit of Zimmer, Shema, and so on. And the picture here is a much more informal occasion, with perhaps a little bit less decorum sometimes, and sometimes more akin to what we call a Yiddish Gesher. That's our davening. Is that how it's meant to be? There are many suggestions as to the origins of the word daven. No one really knows. Some say from the Aramaic, davhatana, from our fathers. Some say from the Hebrew word daf, a page, or davav, meaning to move the lips. Some say from the Arabic, da'awa, meaning to pray. Some say from Lithuanian, davana, a gift, because the Jews in Lithuania had to explain to their Gentile neighbors why they had to stop the mincha, they couldn't sell their wares because they had to give a gift to God. Some say from the Middle High German, dönen, meaning to sing. Even from the Latin, divin, which is not so impossible, because there is a view that the word bench for benching comes from the Latin benedice. No one really knows. The Hebrew word tefillah is from the root pei lamed lamed in the reflexive form hitpalel, meaning to self-reflect. This connotes introspection and self-improvement. So the English word prayer is not really a good translation of tefillah. In biblical times, there was very little standardized prayer. There was the Birchat Kohanim from the Sidra of Nassau. There was a formula on bringing the Bikurim, the first ripe fruits, from the Sidra of Ki Tavor, and there's recitation of some Tehillim in the temple. But other than these, the main form of standard worship was sacrifices. Biblical prayers by individuals were given in a contemporary language, as you might speak to another person, based on a specific need or time or situation. We do not see in individual prayers in Tanakh the majestic language of the Psalms or the complex poetry of Slichot. In fact, we have 140 examples in the Tanakh of prayers by individual, 97 of which we have the actual text. We're not going to look at all 97 now, but I thought we might look at just a few. So I've got Tanakh here. So the first one is Abraham pleading for the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah, 1823. Abraham approaches and says, will you destroy the righteous with the wicked? Perhaps there are 50 righteous people in the city. Would you destroy them? No, we would. If we were composing a prayer now, we'd not be so direct to Hashem, would we? Then we have Eliezer finding a wife for Isaac. Okay, so Vayomarani says, Hashem, God of my master Abraham, make it happen for me today. Deal kindly with your master Abraham. Very, very direct. and so on. There are many other examples. Perhaps the shortest one of all is Moshe's prayer to heal Miriam. Okay, it's 5 words. On Hashem, Rafana Allah. All right, very simple, direct examples of kavanah, sincere devotion, not fixed kavah prayers. They're always in simple language with an address, a request, and often a reason to justify the request. But it was the korbanot, the sacrifices, that were the standard fixed methods of worship. After the destruction of the first temple, the sacrificial system stopped, and the Jews en masse went to Babylon, and they were traumatized. They needed guidance to maintain their identity. Unlike the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom of Israel, who'd been destroyed by the Assyrians, and who'd been spread all over the place, the 10 lost tribes, that was in 722 BCE. The people of Judea, when the temple was destroyed in 586 BCE, went en masse to Babylon, and they stayed together. They met up, perhaps the origin of shuls, but without the temple, essential elements were missing. So the religious leaders had to codify a system of prayer that substituted for the temple service. And they based this on the verse from Hosea, Hu imachem dvarim, v'shuvu el Hashem, imru elav kol tisavo v'chol tov, v'neshalma farim sevatenu. Our lips will offer in place of the sacrifices of bulls. So this was justification for substituting sacrificial worship with speech, avodat halev, the service of the heart. The leaders who bridged the gap at this time between the period of the prophets and the Tanam of the Mishnah were the Anshe Knesset Havdalah. And sometimes, as a kid in school, I have this image of a massive hall and 120 great rabbis all sitting around together. It didn't happen that way, because they went from the last of the prophets, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, right the way down through Mordechai, through Daniel, right the way down to Shimon HaTzadik, the Kohen Gadol who met Alexander the Great. Over 100 years, the Anshe Knesset Havdalah. It wasn't just one assembly. They organized tremendous things that kept the people of Israel together. They organized which books should be included in the Tanakh, and which there were many other holy books that weren't included in the Tanakh. They formulated the brachot, which bracha should go with the Shema, and in particular, they started to compose the Amidah, originally Shemona Esrei, we'll know 18 blessings. And this was to ensure that all Jews, they were now called Jews because they were from Judea, all Jews could pray 3 times a day together with a set prayer in the same language. It was a tremendous and inspirational composition. Just to give one example, the 27 words that form the Rafa'enu prayer correspond to 27 words. At the end of the Shira Hayam, we say, all the diseases that affect Egypt, I won't upon you, for I am your healer. There's 27 words in that pasuk. And it's said that the 27 words in Rafa'enu were meant to correspond to those 27 words. A monumental work. But there were no Siddurim yet, and prayers weren't written down until after the destruction of the second temple. So invariably, differences did creep in. After the second temple was destroyed, another major figure was Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel took over after Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He became the Nasi. And at the time of the destruction, there were lots of warring factions. I'm sure you can't imagine Yidden arguing with each other. But there were tremendous warring factions, and Rabbi Gamliel decided he had to unite them into one nation. And to do so, he became very authoritative. A real, I don't use the word dictator, but a really tough one person in control as Nasi. And he saw his job as making sure that never again would Jews be divided up into such. And so he did a lot of things. There's a famous story. He disagreed with Rabbi Yeshua. I'm sure many of you know Rabbi Yeshua, and he disagreed about the sight of the new moon. So it worked out they had different ideas to when Yom Kippur would fall. So as Nasi, he commanded Rabbi Yeshua to come to him carrying a stick and his purse on the day that Rabbi Yeshua thought it was Yom Kippur. I'm the Nasi. I've decided you come on that day, and he did. When he did come, Rabbi Gamliel did sort of greet him and embrace him and called him my teacher and my student. Everything he did was L'Shem Shemayim, but he was a very tough cookie, Rabbi Gamliel. And there were lots of stories about he upset Rabbi Yeshua on another occasion and made him stand for a whole session in the yeshiva because he disagreed with. He gave a different answer to what he wanted. But it worked. Rabbi Gamliel did impose order. And he did unite the people. He ensured that decisions of Hillel were always followed, with very few exceptions. He decreed decisions of Hillel we will all follow. He tasked Shimon HaPakoli to arrange the 18 blessings that had so far, and he asked Shmuel HaKatan, another great sage, to formulate another blessing because the heretics, the early Christians, were causing trouble. So he could, V'lam Shinim was the 19th blessing, and then he, Ramglil, fixed that order. It may never be changed. And although there are slight differences throughout the Ashkenazi, on the whole, 2,000 years, we've had the same Amidah keeping us going. I thought it might be useful to look at a few into Shmuel HaKatan, actually. Wasn't he was a very short man, Shmuel HaKatan. The Gemara Sanhedrin, Yudalaf Amudallah, says he was called, it's not because of his physical stature, because he was compared to Shmuel Hanavi. Shmuel Hanavi was great, Shmuel HaKatan less so, but still a great man. And another view is that it was his humility. He was called Shmuel HaKatan. He was a small, very, what we call galassan, very gentle soul. Not that he was a tish. I thought we might look at a few appropriate Mishnayot from Brachot, because they're very interesting. So Brachot chapter 4, Mishnah 3. Rabbi Gamliel Omer, this is the boss. Every day you've got to daven your 18 blessings. We still call it Shemona Esrei now, verse 19. Rabbi Shua Omer, Mayan Shemona Esrei. Rabbi Shua, who argued with him, no, you can do a short version. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Im Shkura Tfilas Abafiv. If it's fluent in his mouth, you pull Shemona Esrei, can double the 18. Vim Lav, Mayan Shemona Esrei. If not, it's okay to do a bridged version. But meanwhile, he's saying, no, you do the full 18. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Oset Tefilato Keva, this is where we get the word, he who makes his prayer a fixed thing, Ein Tefilato Zachanonim. His prayer is not supplication. It's no good. It's at fault. And some say he actually means how we understood Keva, a fixed prayer. You shouldn't standardize prayer. They think Rabbi Eliezer was a bit of a lone wolf. He didn't like to conform. He didn't agree with everything Rabbi Gamliel did. In fact, Rabbi Eliezer was excommunicated in the latter years of his life. But certainly, if you govern with fixed prayer, your tefillah is not acceptable. So that's a different view. And the third Mishnah I thought was very interesting. Someone is riding on a donkey. Yered must get, this is to say the Shemona Esrei, to say that tefillah, the prayer means Shemona Esrei. Riding on a donkey should get down to daven. If he can't get down, donkey will bolt. Yachazir Panav should turn his face the right direction. He can't turn his face. He should direct his heart towards the Holy of Holies. What's missing from that mission? Any mention of God? You think about God. But this was this. I'm assuming is his blood to unite the nation. We need to focus. Turn to Jerusalem. Everyone turns to Jerusalem. You're uniting the nation wherever they are. I'd like to mention the Gemara, which encourages communal prayer. So this is Gemara in Tanit, Chet Amud Aleph. Rabbi Yami says, a person's prayer is only heard if he places literally his soul in his palm, if he's really sincere. And the Gemara argues, as Gemara loves to do, but Shmuel taught, I'm quoting Psalm 78, they were not faithful to his covenant, but still, he still was full of compassion for them, which shows your prayers are accepted even without sincerity. And the Gemara, having made the argument, that resolves the argument by saying, Lo kashya, all right, no problem. Kam biyachid, kam b'tzibur. Rabbi Ami, when he was saying about you've got to be sincere, if you're an individual. But Shmuel was in the congregation. If you're with the congregation, your prayers are always acceptable. So this provided much more encouragement for Jews to live together within a strong community. Daven with a minyan, even if you're not 100% on board, the community will make sure your prayers are accepted. So this genius of Chazal, we're going back, best part of 2,000 years, has kept us going and united with our tefillot for the best part of 2,000 years. And this, of course, is more remarkable. There was still no siddur at this point. Prayers, a lot of people weren't fluent. They need the rabbis to give them a lead. But we're here. The prayers have kept going and growing, which we'll mention soon. The first siddur that we know of, 3 centuries after the Talmud was completed, was 875. Rav Avram Gam compiles a siddur, believed to be originally for scholars, but then became the text for communities in Spain, France, and Germany. In 942, Sajid Gaon composed siddur for the communities in the Arab lands. In the 11th century, Rav Simcha ben Shmuel of Vitry compiles Machzor Vitry. Machzor doesn't only mean at this point festivals, it means for the whole year. For communities in northern France. He was a contemporary and Talmud of Rashi. Both he and Rashi died in the year 1105, and their grandchildren married each other. Very nice, yes. And all of these, of course, were handwritten siddurim. There was no printing yet. The first printed siddur was not till 1486, Machzor Romi. 1,000 years after the completion of the Talmud was the first printed siddur. You know, we take it for granted. We go to the show, pick up a siddur, it's all there. We take it all for granted. It wasn't always the case. In 1513, there was an Ashkenazi siddur in Prague. 1526, a Sephardi siddur in Venice, and various other ones. But the main one for us as Ashkenazim was 1868. The Seder Avodat Israel was a definitive Ashkenazi siddur produced by Yitzchak or Seligman Bear. He compiled sources, compared manuscripts, and this became the authoritative model for Ashkenazi communities, including the Singer's Prayer Book. Okay, so our liturgy has grown over these centuries from the simple, straight-talking biblical prayers to pages and pages of slichot and super complex piyutim that we have. So, should we cut down the volume of prayers to improve our devotion? A lot of people say, yes. Yeah, but we have a problem because we have a principle. We don't change the rulings of earlier generations. We say the generations are weakening. We're not as knowledgeable as previous generations. We don't like to change things already made. Second day Yom Tov, yes? Yeah. Yes, exactly. Change. Should we be praying in English to improve our understanding and our devotion? Well, interesting, because there's a dispute back in the Talmud. We can look at this one. It's Brachot Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Very interesting because it's not perhaps what you might think. Here we are. Tonu Rabban, rabbis taught. Kriya Shema Kichtaba Divrei Rabbi. The Kriya Shema should be in as written in Hebrew. These are the words of Rebbe. Rebbe is Rabbi Nasi. V'chachamim omrim v'chol lashon. In any, other sages say, in any language. My Talmud Rabbi. What's the reason of Rebbe? Omakra v'hayu. We say v'hayu from Eile. As verse says v'hayu. V'havyatanyahu. As it is, they should be always. Keep it in Hebrew. Rabbanan. My Talmud. What's the reason of the rabbis? Omakra Shema. We actually have Shema. So you've got to listen. B'chol lashon she'ata Shema. Whatever language you can understand. Rebbe nami haktiv Shema. So well, how does Rebbe understand the word Shema then? What does he use Shema for? He needs it for Hashama l'osnecha ma she'ata motzi b'picha. Your ears should hear what your mouth is saying. He should say Shema loud enough to actually hear what you're saying. Rabbanan sabrin hu, or command Amar lo yishmir os no yotza. The rabbis say you don't need to hear out loud. He doesn't need to do that. Urabonami haktiv v'hayu. All right. So how do the rabbis explain v'hayu as v'ma'eleh? What does that mean? They use it. You shouldn't read it in the wrong order. You have to set the verses and paragraphs in the right order. Rebbe is, so how does he know you shouldn't read it in the right order? The extra hey hadvarim, he says, shows that one. Rabbanan dvarim hadvarim. So how the rabbis, typical Gemara, backwards and forwards. How do the rabbis use dvarim hadvarim? They don't explain that one. So the early results were very much, and all agree the Amida can be in any language. Okay, the early halacha was you can say any language that you understand. But later authorities, in the last couple of centuries, later have gone back on that. Later authorities don't want you to say it in other languages. So I suspect this is a reaction against the emancipation and the progressive movements. As you say, change, it's a slippery slope. You must start doing all English, start doing moves, what's going to happen? So we've almost become, well, synagogue says become right wing. Okay, there's always a movement against that reaction. So, Keva versus Kavana. Ideally, we should combine both, reciting our fixed prayers, but with sincere devotion. Okay, and I'd like to conclude with three lovely quotes. So from Tanit, the Gemara Tanit, Amud Aleph, what is Avodah Shebalev? This is prayer. Yehuda Halevi, who lived round about just after the time of Rashi, Prayer is to the soul what food is to the heart. And my final quote is a wonderful quote by Rabbi Sachs, which I think sums up everything we need to know. And I quote, we use the words of the greatest of those who have come before us to make our prayers articulate and to join them to the prayers of others throughout the world and throughout the centuries. And on that note.
Some of the prayers on Arabic,
Yes. Yeah.
So it is. So
yes.
Surely, therefore, almost the same sort of argument you could make some of the prayers in English.
Yeah. The main four. We do those in English. Originally, it seems that we could, but we seem to have gone back against that. You're right. Yes, lots of the prayers are in Aramaic.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for that. That was very interesting. Now at least we can know what we're doing when we daven in future. Okay, so I will say goodbye to those on Zoom, and then we'll finish off the proceedings here in the shul. So bye-bye, Zoom people.